When we caught up after the scrimmage on Saturday, you had kind of said that you hadn't really noticed too much tangible separation, maybe just between the ones and the twos in terms of positional battles. And I know a whole lot of time hasn't passed since Saturday, but I was wondering if that still would be your answer when asked just about the competition, and if you are starting to see any kind of hints of separation in those position battles.
Still no separation yet. Justin, but it is getting fierce, which is what I like. They understand that, particularly on some of the close battles, that every rep counts. They don't want to make a mistake. They want to make a play. They want to execute the technique and the assignment properly, so that they don't take any plays off, so to speak. So there's a level of urgency that a lot of these guys that are competing for jobs are really, heightening their awareness to do, which is what you want your team to be. But no real separation yet. I think our quarterbacks overall today, that's the one position I'm sure everybody has a thought about, but I thought all three of them did some really good things today. They all had 2-minute drives, and I thought they performed well within the plays that were given to them. So I was really pleased with that. And I think there's, in the other positions at receiver and running back and DB, and those things are all going to sort itself out. But, those other areas have really good depth for us. I know that when it's all said and done, there's going to be a collective number of guys that are going to contribute to help us be successful. So it's not like whoever loses the job is going to be just sitting down and not getting any time, except for maybe at the quarterback position. But I think everything else is going to be rotational basis, almost at every other position.
Let's go to Pat Rooney.
Coach, one thing I've been wondering about is, obviously a unique situation, you coming in and not getting much practice at all so far. Are you implementing things at the same rate you might have had you had a normal spring and a normal summer? Are maybe things having to go a little bit more slowly, or is it sped up because of the urgency of getting ready so quickly?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, but a great question too. It's kind of a combination of both. I thought we started out camp where the first 2 or 3 days of install was a lot of information, a lot of volume, and I think they digested it well. It was a great start. Now we're on day 10 and we're doing more situational play. I think the installs, for the most part, other than a few things here and there situationally, are pretty much done. So, but we did have in mind about not putting too much on them, just because of how much we had to make an educated guess as to how much offense and defense we can digest between these 25 practices to make sure it's well executed, that they digested it, and that they're ready to utilize on November 7th. So there was that thought in mind of not having too much in our packages, but we didn't know how far we can take them. And given what we did today, there's some really smart kids on our team that we think they can handle more. We might start to feed them a little bit more. But you're right, we were guarded at first with how much, but I think now that we have 10 practices in, we have a pretty good idea of what our guys can handle. Thanks.
Let's go to Adam Munster-Tiger.
Hi, Coach. Was hoping to get your impressions of the outside linebackers group through 10 practices. Which players in that group have been showing the most consistency?
Well, we're really fortunate to have a guy like Carson Wells. I mean, he's kind of the leader of that group. He has the most experience in starts, and so we're really excited about where he's at. He's actually a veteran player, but has improved his skill set. He's a little bigger, he's stronger, he runs a little bit better. So all those things that we're really excited about him. We have some young guys that are really starting to step up. Guy Thomas is having a good camp. He's learning his system and, being one of our outside Sam linebackers as well. Jamar Montgomery has done really well too. Both those guys are, just being implemented in our system. They had some time last year, but not very much. But I think they're getting more comfortable, in the roles that they're doing right now. Joska Gustav he's currently injured right now. He has an ankle sprain, but he was actually having a really good camp as well. Kind of was a surprise of the group, but he's down right now with his ankle sprain, and so he's out for a little bit. But we've been very pleased. Even Devin Grant, guys, young players that have been in that, in that position, they're learning and getting better each and every day. But I would say that the veteran group that I mentioned, the first few names, they're actually having very good camps.
Mr. Neil Wilk.
Hey, Carl, had a question about your running backs. In years past, have you been comfortable with a running back by committee type of thing?
I've been comfortable in either scenario about that, Neil. Sometimes you have a guy that's your workhorse that gets 70-80% of the work, and then you have a guy that supplements and comes off. I think in our situation, Alex Fontenot is obviously our veteran player. He's done a really nice job. He'll probably, if anybody that has the biggest piece of the pie, he may have the biggest piece. But I think with the other guys that are actually having really good camps as well, they're going to get some smaller slivers of the pie too. So we don't I won't say it's by committees, clearly by committee, like going every other series or something like that, Neil. I think we have a guy that we think is the guy, and then we have a few guys that we feel that they can be a hot hand for us. And that's kind of how I've used to done the second guy that we come off the bench. If he's a hot hand, you kind of give him more plays or more chances. But it's definitely a great luxury to have the depth that we have right now.
And one more for you, Mark Johnson.
Hey, Karl, real quick, I just want to ask you about the defensive front. I mean, you've got a few guys up there that have played quite a bit of football, Terrence Langer, Mustafa Johnson, a couple of younger guys who worked in a little bit last year. But an evaluation of your defensive front right now and what you've seen through 10 practices.
It's hard to run the ball on them, which is exactly what I wanted them to be, in all honesty. I think our defensive line has some really good depth and a really excellent potential behind the guys that are kind of our name players, Mustafa and Terrence and Jalen Sammy. Those are the guys that have been our starters. But there's some guys that are quietly making a name for themselves in camp, and with their consistency. They're doing a nice job with those things. So Lord Murray is doing a nice job. Naeem Rodman is really understanding his role and is doing a nice job in there. Justin Jackson, he's doing his role. Janaz Jordan, and Austin Williams, all those guys are all young players. They all are doing their roles pretty well. And I think what Chris Wilson has done with those guys is really put those guys in packages, so that they've taken ownership on, okay, I'm in this package, this is what I do, and and they do it with a lot of pride and effort. And I think that's what you're seeing with our defensive line, or what you will see, is that we have some depth behind those starters, and I think we have some good quality depth that I think will help us play well, and sustain through the game.
Neil, did I cut off your follow-up question? And then the last one from Pat Rooney.
Coach, just real quick, wondering, on top of everything else, how much, I don't know if you were outdoors today, but how much have you all had to monitor the air quality, not just today, but in practice so far?
Well, if you remember the scrimmage we had on Saturday, we were really concerned whether we can go outside, because Friday it was a dust bomb over the stadium. And so we were concerned, but apparently the weather cleared out and we were able to do the scrimmage outside on in our stadium. Monday was fine, and then today was, I started smelling it towards the end of practice today, but at the start of practice at 9:30, there weren't any issues in terms of where you smelled any smoke or anything, but I did, notice it towards the end of practice. So we've been very fortunate, so far, given how these fires are right over the hill here. We haven't had any change of venue yet, when those things have occurred.